Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, it's finally time to rank the Scream franchise. And oh my God, you guys, it's been so hard for me to narrow down, what my actual choices are. I thought I was ready to do this video like a couple weeks ago, and I just kept second guessing and changing my mind a little bit. And I just want to say right off the beginning, I'm not expecting everybody to agree with this at all. If you have them in a totally different order, I completely respect that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm glad, we're all Scream fans here anyway. So it's just nice to hear the different opinions on what people liked about certain movies and what they didn't. But this is my breakdown of my favorite Scream movies. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to do my ranking a little bit different than everybody else does. Generally, you start with the last place and you work up to the first place, right? Well, I was thinking with Scream, it's pretty much the general consensus what the number one film is. I mean, sure, there's exceptions. I know some people do like other Scream movies more than the original, but clearly the original is the one that gets by far the most votes on the favorite. And it's no different for me, so I just want to get that out of the way right off the bat because that's no surprise for anyone. Of course, my very favorite is the 1996 original Scream film. I got to tell you guys, it is definitely one of my favorite horror films of all time. Definitely one of the best slashers. Some of Wes Craven's best work. I know some people do think that is his best work. I will never go that far. I'm just not going to go as far as saying it's Wes Craven's best ever, but it is absolutely up there, and I think he completely revived the slasher genre in 1996 when this movie came out. Like, I saw this movie opening night back in December of '96. I remember it was pretty cold, and I went with my now wife and a friend of mine and his girlfriend, and I just was really, really impressed with that movie coming out of it. I was blown away how well it was done. From the very opening scene, which is still one of my favorite openings in all of horror. It's a fantastic opening. My favorite of all of them as well, out of all the openings, because there's some very cool ones. But the first one, for sure, I just can't say enough good things about it. It's well acted. I thought the movie overall is just really well executed. It's a fantastic story by Kevin Williamson, and Wes putting it to screen the way he did. It was great. It had some genuine scariness. Roger Jackson is fantastic, of course, with the voice of Ghostface, as always. And nothing beats the original. I could go on for days about how well made this movie is and how great it is. But I just wanted to get that out of the way off the top because really this is going to be more about what's, sixth place to second place, because that's where most people are kind of scrambled up and everybody's got their own opinions. Okay, so for my number 6 pick, I don't want to kind of crap on it by any means, okay? So I do enjoy all the Scream movies. This is just the one that is my least favorite out of all of them. So it doesn't mean it's bad, and it's fine if it's your favorite. I don't mean to offend you by any means. It's just, for me, the number 6 is Scream 4. Now, the reason for that, for me, is just because it's just the one that I enjoyed the least. It's as simple as that. It's an interesting story. It's a little goofy, but the story isn't bad, and it has some good scenes in it as well. And I thought Emma Roberts did a good job. Like, the acting was really good, and I thought she was great in the role. On the flip side of it, when the killer reveal happened, I was, I felt, I don't know what the word is, not exactly ripped off, but I felt like, what on earth are you talking about, kind of thing. Like, it's hard to explain. It's just, Emma Roberts is probably 5'2", and what is she, 115 pounds, soaking wet. And Mr. Culkin, I forget his first name. Anyway, he was in Signs. Great movie. Love that movie. But him as the killer, too. He's another guy who's, I believe he's 5'6", and I think he's listed somewhere in that 135 to 145 range, maybe. Like, he's not a very big guy. So it's just one of those things that's hard to imagine. Like, I'm not a large guy by any means. I'm about 6'2", and I'm in the 190s. So for me, somebody like that trying to physically attack me, you know, if they're not, you know, trained or something, like I just can't imagine somebody manhandling me like that. I mean, they absolutely could get a stab in or something, but you would grab them, and I just can't see it. That's why it's so hard to imagine this, you know, this 5'2", you know, Emma Roberts, you know, pulling that. It's a really tough sell. Holy man, was that tough. When I saw that, I just was like, what on earth? And I didn't understand at the time that Scream really isn't about that as much anymore. It's more like a modern day Clue, kind of. It's always a whodunit. Who's going to be the killer? Oh, you know, and they show all the faces. It was still a good story, like I said, but it got a little goofy for me, and it's just one that I don't enjoy quite as much. I did really like Kirby's character. I thought she was fun and you know, knowledgeable and everything, and I am glad that they brought her back for the latest one. But yeah, overall 4 is on the bottom of my list. And again, it's not to offend anybody here. I understand some of you just adore it. I couldn't get there with the Killers. It was a tough sell. All right, so for number 5, this one was a little bit tough because I was kind of going back and forth with my number 4 a bit because they're close. So I'll start with 5. What I ended up putting in the number 5 spot is actually Scream 5. Now, again, no disrespect to the movie. I thought it was a fun movie. It is good, and I enjoy it more after seeing 6 than I did previously. And I'm sure it's because of the character development and everything like that, because, you know, you didn't quite know as much. And a lot of the OGs, I think, were seeing this Scream 5 and seeing all these new characters and kind of these original characters swept to the side a little bit with their story, and they weren't very important, and they're like, hey man, you know, and that was a little bit tough. But it was exciting that they have finally made another Scream movie, which is kind of what happened with 4. I mean, you know, it was like 10 years basically. So it was a long wait, which was cool, and I do like the fact that they were able to sort of bring Billy back, you know, kind of with the, you know, the in Sam's head. I thought that was kind of neat having him in the movie. It was an interesting angle. So I did appreciate that. I also like the toxic fandom angle because, you know, there definitely is some of that out there for sure. And I thought Richie's character was interesting. Although I did call that right away. As soon as I saw him on screen just walking out to Sam, I just had this feeling right away. I was just like comforting what looks like the new main character. I'm already really suspicious of him, and I'm like, I bet you he's going to end up being the killer. Watch, you know? And sure enough, with Amber, I thought they might do that, and I was sort of on to that as well about halfway through the movie, but at first I wasn't quite sure, you know? But Amber didn't take too much longer to figure out. But again, that's another one I had a little bit of trouble with. I thought Richie could probably pull it off. He seemed to have, you know, again, it's this physical thing that was putting me off. Like, you know, Amber was, geez, another one is what, just barely over 5 feet tall. You know, probably a $110 soaking wet again. It's just like, how are you pulling off all these amazing kills? And these stabs were like, you know, apparently she was the one who must have killed Dewey. So I don't know. You pull out the second knife and you're literally struggling with him and you're taking him out. Amber is taking out Dewey. He's been in a lot of struggles. Which brings me to my other, shall we say, con about Scream 5 is I really hated what they did to Dewey's character. I thought it was completely out of character for him, like they had always played up Dewey like he was kind of a sweet, innocent, law doing, you know, you talk to me like a man of the law, you say stuff like that. He just sounded so legitimately innocent and serious about his job. And, the whole hat off and you're much prettier in person. The whole thing with Gale, like he was always kind of nerdy and sweet and serious. So even as the Scream movies went on, he was still kind of like that. It was so weird to see him be so far gone that he had become like a drunk and somebody who couldn't even keep his shit together to keep his job. I'm just like, Dewey did that? Because it's just totally out of character for me. That just blew my mind. I'm like, what did you do to Dewey? And then Amber killed him too, and I'm like, so I had 5 really close with my number 4 pick. I almost gave it that spot, but for those reasons, I went, okay, I gotta put it in my number 5 spot. So moving on to number 4 is none other than Scream 3. Oh yes, Scream 3. This one, I've talked about this a little bit before. Scream 3 is a movie that when it came out, after seeing the first and second one, when 3 hit the theaters, I was not nearly as impressed with it. I thought it was kind of dumb and sloppy, and I don't like what they did with it. And I remember being generally kind of annoyed with it, and I just thought it was weak. Watched it a few times. Sure, I had it in my collection. That's the 1, 2, 3 set, the DVDs that came out way back in the day. I probably bought that in 2001 or 2 or whatever it was when it came out. But I didn't watch 3 that much, just for that reason. And it's one of those ones that I went back into after watching 5, just for the hell of it, just to go back and watch again. And I remember appreciating it so much more because the characters still seemed like the characters. Only a few years had passed since the original, and everybody still resembled themselves. And the story is all right. I don't mind it. I didn't mind Roman as the killer. I thought he was clever enough and had connections enough to pull some of that off. It was a pretty wild story, but I thought he was good, and it was more believable for me that he could have been the killer. Yeah, I didn't mind Scream 3 nearly as much as I did when I first saw it. It almost felt like, kind of going home to how Scream used to be kind of thing. So I found this new appreciation for it where it felt like I was seeing a movie, more like from that time. And I don't know, it just made me happier, I guess, watching it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I used to. And then the other thing is Scream 3 had those awesome Maureen Prescott scenes. Like, if you ask me, those are some of the scariest scenes in the franchise where, it's Mother, and there was just these scary, weird-ass, ghostly dreams Sydney kept having and everything were really freaking me out. I just remember thinking, that's creepy, man. So that was kind of cool about Scream 3. And the other thing about 3 is it has a really awesome opening. The opening was really cool. I just thought it was really, it was kind of a bummer that they killed off Cotton. I thought it would have been cool to somehow have him be Ghostface or a Ghostface before he dies, because it would be neat because he's tied to the original killer because they thought it was him, and what a surprise, with the whole clue element, like I mentioned with Scream. I think that that could have been something they really could have done some magic with. Yeah, so I think that was a bit of a missed opportunity. Now the cons for Scream 3, well, Randy is still dead, so that sucks. But at least we did get an appearance on video from him. That's another reason kind of why I like it. So I guess it's more of a pro there because he's at least in it for a minute or so. But it's still annoying that he's gone. There was some really wacky, silly comedy in it that, was kind of unnecessary. And some of the characters were a little annoying, mostly the stab actors and stuff. Well, some of them, not all of them. But those are some things where I thought it's not great for those reasons, but I could definitely look past them when I was getting so much nostalgia off of it. Yeah, I put it there. I don't know. Like I said, I struggled with 5 and 3 because to me they're pretty close in how much I enjoy them. So that's kind of where I rank those. All right, so this is going to be it for the surprises. And my number 3, with only 2 movies left, which one did I pick? I went with Scream 6, of course. I'm too OG to give it that number 2 spot yet. But Scream 6 was fantastic. I thought it was a really great movie. The most ruthless Ghostface we have seen yet. Love the kills. Love the setting. Many, many great scenes. The bodega convenience store scene was absolutely killer. Love that scene so much. It's just badass. The subway scene is super cool. That movie is filled with all sorts of really interesting scenes. The shrine was cool. I really, really liked that movie. They did an excellent job with it. And then there's the core 4, which I thought really grew on me a lot with 6. I just felt a lot closer to them. I felt I knew them a little better. I was rooting for them, whereas in 5, I didn't really know them yet. And there really wasn't enough there to make me care a lot about these new characters. And, looking back on 5 after watching 6, you appreciate it a little bit more. So I think that's one of the things that made it hard for me to, position a lot of these movies. But in 6, I really did enjoy the core 4. I thought they did a great job with that, and definitely one of the highlights of the movie. It's a really good movie, and there's an argument for it being my number 2 choice as well. It was tough. I was going back with the 2 of them for a while there, and I just thought, I'm not ready to give up that spot just yet. And it's mainly because, again, the killer reveal in 6 was the con for me. Pretty much the lone con. Like, I liked Dermot Mulroney. I thought he was good. But, I mean, again, I had the most trouble with Quinn. Again, another young girl they chose. But again, it's the modern day Clue. I understand that it's not necessarily about believable at all anymore. I mean, Ethan, at first, I didn't find it very believable. He seemed to me like kind of like a skinny kid and kind of a tough sell. But I mean, if you look at the guy, he is pretty tall and he's not tiny. He's definitely, and you look at Billy in the first movie and, he's probably around the same size, probably a little taller actually. So I remember watching it for the second time and thinking, well, that one doesn't really bother me as much. I thought he could probably pull it off. But Quinn, I was like, man, that's a tough sell again, and she spent most of her time cracking jokes and, screwing guys in her bedroom all the time. I don't know. It wasn't very believable for me. So that one I had trouble with. And then, Dermot Mulroney being sort of the brains behind it, I thought awesome. Some people were telling me that they said, well, he was clearly Ghostface as well. And I thought, well, was he though? Like, did we have any indication that he ever put on a robe and killed anyone himself? And it wasn't, the kids running around getting everything done? Because that's how I took it. I took it as he clearly didn't ever have a Ghostface outfit on. I mean, if he did, that's more believable too. Dermot, I think, would have made a good killer. It's hard to imagine them pulling off some of the feats they did. Like, for instance, with Gail's new boyfriend, that huge dude, and that's supposed to be Quinn? Like, what are you talking about? How? I think it would have been hard for Ethan to pull that off too. You'd have to really sneak up on him. There was one thing that I did think was a little bit more believable is with 6 and how brutal the killings were. A lot of the times it was stab, 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 like it was real fast, right? Which we didn't really see any of that in like 5 or any of the previous ones. And I thought, okay, maybe if you're not a big physical person, you got up to somebody quick, caught them off guard, and just went stab, stab, stab. They're done. So I believe it there, but that's not really what they were portraying with 4 or 5. I never really saw any of that crazy rapid stabbing where you're like, oh wow, just in seconds they've already got you. It's not just one quick stab and then it's a tussle and you're bleeding and you know. And we know a lot of people have been stabbed multiple times in these movies and survived. So that's kind of the universe, I guess. But it was just that was a tough sell for me with Quinn and being able to take out Gail's boyfriend so fast. I was like, wow, it's a whodunit. So I get it, but I'm trying to look past those flaws with the killer. That always makes me go, huh. And it's not that I'm just picking on the girls. I know it sounds like I am, but the girls they have chosen, they're generally, you know, they're not. There's girls out there that are physically larger people. You know, and they could fuck some shit up. Absolutely. I'm not saying they can't, you know what I mean? Which brings me to my number 2 pick, which is obviously Scream 2. And I just want to talk a little bit about Laurie Metcalf's character, Mrs. Loomis, because she was incredibly convincing for me. I thought her acting was fantastic. She seemed like a crazed lunatic mother who was methodical, knew what she was doing, was very good at it, and just downright creepy, you know? And when she was talking about getting a little knife happy, you know, for me, I really believe she could do it, you know, and it was probably the stab, 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 you know, like she seemed unstable and wacko. Like she frightened me in that, like she sold me on that woman is crazy enough and determined enough, and she is an angry mother who has lost her child in Billy, of course, and is seeking revenge, you know, a la Pamela Voorhees, right? So there was also that connection. You know how much the Scream franchise drew from other slasher franchises and stuff, right? It was easy to draw that comparison to Mrs. Voorhees in that respect. And it was believable for me, even though Laurie isn't a huge person either. Like, don't get me wrong. She just sold me. I didn't have any trouble believing that at all. I really was like, yeah, for sure. You do not want to mess with Mrs. Loomis. Dangerous, you know? Whereas the other girls I had mentioned I had a little trouble with, like Jill, you know? Good mastermind, I just can't see her in the Ghostface outfit, you know, bodying folks. And that's what really, you know, that's a tough sell. Same with Quinn, same with Amber. Like, what? Mrs. Loomis, not so much. No. Like, she didn't spend her off time, you know, like Quinn, just, you know, banging guys in the dorm room, you know, and like she was determined. She was doing the reporter thing, going around after Gail, and like she was on the same focus through the whole movie. It was determined, and there was a goal. The whole Quinn thing seemed like it was a distraction, and they're like, she did it. Whoa, you didn't see that coming, did you? Or did you? You know. So I felt like it's a little different in that respect. That's what I liked about 2, is the reveal was really cool. Which brings me to the other killer, played by Timothy Olyphant. Basically a man crush of mine. I've loved that guy forever. He's great in Scream. He was awesome in Go. And, you know, he was in Gone in 60 Seconds, all these movies back then. He was in The Girl Next Door. He's been in tons of stuff. Mandalorian. I could go on. Anyway, the guy's awesome, and definitely a convincing Ghostface killer. Like, he has the physicality to do it too, and it's believable, you know. I really enjoyed the Scream 2 reveals, and they had some of the best chase scenes. You know, some of the other movies had it too, for sure, but Scream 2, wow, really cool ones. And the car crash scene where the girls have to climb over him, I thought that scene is brilliant. Love that. Scream 2 does have some wackiness in it as well. I remember watching it for the last time and thinking, the last time recently, sorry. I mean, watched it for the last time. I don't mean that. I mean, the last time I actually watched it, I felt like maybe it wasn't quite as strong as I thought it was in some areas. But the thing about Scream 2 that, of course, has always pissed me off was that they killed Randy. Because Randy was, hands down, bar none, my favorite character. He was the one I could relate to, right? He was the horror nerd, and he was in the video store. And, you know, I worked in a video store when I was in high school. And, you know, he was just my kind of character. He was great. I was really choked when they decided to kill him in the second one. And I believe it is something that they regretted later on. I'm sure Wes Craven said something about that at some point, that they probably shouldn't have killed Randy, just because there was quite the backlash and so many people loved him. Randy is just an awesome character, you know, so many people love him. So that was one thing I really hated about Scream 2. Yeah, and some of the other scenes, like the theatrical stuff that, you know, Nev was doing was a little blah. Didn't really matter too much for me. You know, they do the dancing around. She sees the ghost face mask and stuff. And I guess not one of my favorite scenes. I thought that was a little bit silly. And of course, in the film class, there's some funny sequel cliches and stuff they're talking about, and references to sequels and everything that made it so fun back then. I'll always love it for those reasons. And I know it definitely has its flaws, and it will always upset me that we lost Randy in that. But overall, I thought Scream 2 is a fantastic movie. You know, it's definitely still my number 2 pick, although 6 is awfully close. It's tough between the two because 6 is full of such fun scenes that were so cool. It was a little bit weird not having Sidney in it, but, you know, with the trajectory of the story, they're moving away from that. And yeah, I don't feel it's necessary, but I do feel like you're going to have to bring her back at some point to get some closure there, whether she gets killed or not, or something happens. You know that if there's a ghost face killer that keeps coming back, eventually they're going to want to get at Sidney, right? Like, she's the original. And it's so based on all these previous movies and stuff. You would think all of these purist horror toxic fans or whatever would want to get after Sidney the most still, because, you know, she's the Laurie Strode, you know, for the Scream franchise, or like Laurie is to the Halloween franchise. You know what I'm saying? Really, I don't know what they're going to be doing for 7, but it's exciting to know it's certainly going to end up getting made. All right, well, that'll pretty much do it for my Scream ranking. Like I said, this is just my opinion. It's no big deal. Like, I do like all of the movies, so if you like one a lot more than the other and totally disagree with me, cool. I respect your opinion. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear your order that you guys would put them in. You know, if you want to drop them in the comments, it'd be great. I'd love to chat a little bit about it and stuff and just get your take. I know everybody's got their own takes and their own favorites, and that's cool too. So let me know in the comments what you guys think, and thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Enjoy your evening, and we will see you again for the next one. Take care, guys.